Coach, obviously, coming off here with a lot of injuries in your group, I'm just wondering, your thoughts on this year's group.
I think by the time we get to fall camp, we'll be full go just with the injured guys. There are still a couple guys that we're missing just because of that from injuries last year. But the improvement this year has been good. We played a lot of young kids last year. D tackles wise, just took a lot of lumps that way. But also, I think it'll pay dividends for us this year. Seeing a good spring for a lot of those the freshmen that played last year, JoJo Johnson and Thomas Collins, as well as Vita Pome. They've all, as young kids, had a good spring.
And Nico Taylor, what have you seen from him, and how glad are you guys obviously to have
and back? Nico's with the edges,
right?
And so I coach the D tackles. Coach Marshall's the one that'll be coaching the edges, and so that's probably a more appropriate question for him. But Nico's done well. We've been excited to get him back for sure, getting that extra year, and he's been having a good spring as well, just from last year. Time in the system for, especially at that position for edges. It's really, really good. It's huge. Gives them an opportunity to just get the nuances of the game and the calls and just all those things. So Nico's having a good spring.
You mentioned Coach Marshall. How does it help you having a coach dedicated to coaching the edges?
This is really the first time that I've experienced that in my career, being on the defensive side of the ball. I think it's huge. It's allowed me to be a little bit more detailed in the nuanced play of the D tackles, which they're really two different. When you have some teams that'll put the corners and the safeties together in one room, but that coach always has an assistant that helps them out. And there's benefits to doing stuff like that, and there's benefit to having all the D linemen in one room. But with the system that we play and all the different things the edges do, they're totally different positions. And so it's been huge, I think, to have Coach Marshall, and they've done that in the past too with Coach Hoot that was here before. It's just the system allows an analyst position or just another position coach to coach the edges, because there's so many different things that we do with those guys, because we're most of the teams that we face nowadays are 11 personnel, and so we'll be in 11 personnel, nickel personnel with our deal, but then we're really built as a defense like a 3-4. And so I don't know if a lot of people don't know that. And so we have two edges and three D tackles, and one of them that's kind of a hybrid D tackle DN. And so there's a lot of nuance to just all the positions and just what they do. But having two separate coaches for our system, I think, is really, really important.
Do you guys structurally? I find that very interesting. So the meeting room, is it always just you guys? Do you ever get together do you combine it with the edges sometimes, or sometimes do they go with the backers? How do those meetings work?
We're so different, and so our meetings are completely separate. So even in the edges room, you've got two different guys that are on the field, and both of the techniques that are required on certain plays are different. And so even in the edges room, having two coaches, and so right now we've got a senior analyst, Coach Aki, that's in there with Coach Marshall, and they'll basically on the same exact play call be coaching two different techniques, because this edge has got this and this edge has got this, and so there's a lot that way. And so we never really get together when it comes to meetings. We'll get together when it comes to just stuff on the field, things that we need to do with the stunt games and all that stuff with our edges and D tackles. But for the most part, we're separate just because there's so many differences.
On the transfer portal, you brought in Mullix to work with your group. What have you seen from him at this point?
He unfortunately is just kind of banged up early, and so we're expecting to get him back next week. And so he got a couple of practices early, and then some unfortunate things just with kind of slowing him down. But he will be full go next week, and we'll be able to see what he does. But he's got a quick first step. He's I think he fits the system as far as just us getting into the backfield, being penetrating, and just causing havoc in the backfield. And that's what we're trying to do as an interior group.
You mentioned the freshmen that got a lot of time last year, maybe took their lumps a little bit. Is this the year that they'll be rewarded for some of the lumps they maybe took last year?
I think that's the case with any freshman, and it's not just those three that played. Xavier Ayers last year as a corner, played. And so there's just, Sai Vajrawala was another one that played. There's just a lot of freshmen that are playing that this spring, and I'm not necessarily watching as a coordinator's eye all of it, but I am. You can kind of recognize that some of these guys are making strides and improvements, and the defense is better for it, for sure.
Talking to the players since Bray took over, they said he's more of an attacking style. How's that sort of changed the mindset and the way that you coach the position this year?
Oh, it's it's really been good to have Coach Bray completely take over. What he wants and what it's supposed to look like. It's really clear as far as just the direction that we're going, and really I think we were trying to do a lot of the stuff last year, same stuff last year, but it's just not as good just because you have a lot of young guys and just maybe newer kids in the system, newer coaches in the system, the transfer portal, you get kind of newer guys coming in. So, year two for sure, especially just with Coach Bray taking over and having probably more clarity in the things that we're doing as far as the expectation and the style and the philosophy of playing, for sure has been a lot more clear, and it's been good. It's been good for us to do, and with between the D tackle play and the linebacker play, there's a direct. One of us directly affects the other one in the run and the pass, and so hearing his voice and just kind of how he sees it and what he wants, it's been good for me just as an interior coach because it's just really clarity is probably the biggest thing, but definitely love how Coach Bray has taken over the play calling duties. I've already learned a lot, and I've coordinated for 7 years, and so I'm excited for the direction that we're going, and I think that it's been good so far in the spring for sure.
Obviously, those younger players getting some experience playing is a benefit to you as well as to them. Have you seen the growth you kind of expect to see from those players from year one to year two? Yeah,
and it's not just time in the system and understanding it, but the game of football in general, right? Like when you're coming from high school to college, the game's faster, the schemes are more complex, but then also you're still 18. Some of them graduated 17, and so a guy like JoJo, for instance, is his body's changed. He got here, and I think he was 310 at first, but he was really, really high body fat. Now he's one of the lower body fat percentages in my room, but he's 295, and so he's just changed his body in the correct way, and it just makes for a better player. And then obviously understanding football a little bit better. So, as things as simple as just down and distance and recognition of body demeanor by an O lineman and listening to the language of the O line at the line of scrimmage, like those kinds of things. You, as a young player, sometimes it just that's here, right? You're looking over, you're getting the call, and it's bullets are flying, things are a little bit faster. But I think as those guys get a little bit more experience, they're able to kind of just slow the game down and see things a little bit better, and just makes them better players.
Bray kind of he set the tempo early on, saying that he wants to get after the quarterback more this year. From your group, what do you feel like is sort of that missing piece? Has it been execution? Questions like that,
or answers to questions like that, I think I think somebody asked that last fall. We're just kind of where we were. It's really a conglomerate of a bunch of different things. Now, what we can control is just taking care of ourselves better physically. We're prepared a little bit more, but also just understanding what we're doing, understanding what the O-line's trying to do, understand how we're trying to attack them. And I think with the year under our belt, a lot of those young guys we're understanding it a lot better, and we're able to do it. And then that's I'm almost answering more for everybody, because now the edges are part of it, the coordinator's part of it, as far as just the scheme that's called. And so I think we're all kind of we're all pushing in the same direction with the vision of the head coach and the coordinator, which is we want to get after the quarterback more and better. And it's the answer to the question there is a lot of different things that we're doing in everybody's room, in all of our rooms, to get to where we want to be.
You mentioned the kind of like two traditional sort of interior tackle types and then one kind of hybrid. What are you looking for in that hybrid, and amongst the guys on the roster, who kind of fits that role the best, has the traits you're looking for?
Right now, in our room, the two guys that are playing in that, and so in our base stuff are Thomas Collins will play that, as well as JoJo Johnson. They'll play the base D end. And that really, if the best base DN ends up coming from the edges room, then that guy will play. And a couple of years ago, when Nusi Lohel was here, he was the one that played it. He played interior tackle, but then he also played edge. And so that's kind of the guy that'll swing both ways depending on what the package is and what it calls for.
When it comes to like creating pressure, is the scheme set up so that you're looking to create pressure from that interior, or is it your job to provide like the skeleton or the support for the defense so that the pressure can come from the edges or from the backers or slot or wherever they bring it
probably
from?
The latter, what you're talking about. If we're going in with just a 4-man rush and just base coverage, there's still an expectation in the way that we play up front. We're looking to get knocked back. We're looking to penetrate. We're looking to get into the backfield, and so there is an expectation of us with the way that we play. We're not really looking at two gap and stay at the line of scrimmage, and there's benefit to both. As you've seen kind of in the NFL, everybody does both. But our brand of football, our style of football, and what fits the coordinator, and which I've loved because it's kind of freed us up front to really get after it. Has been that style.